to Raunchy Power Hour, a book club for discussing romance from the erotic to the erroneous. As always, this is an explicit podcast and contains strong language, adult themes, and sexual content. If you are sensitive to these things, we urge you calmly but sincerely to turn off your radio now. This month, we are reading Lunar Love by Lauren Kung-Jessen. This is part 1 of Lunar Love. This podcast will contain spoilers through chapter 13. If you want to read along with us, stop listening now. It's okay. We'll wait for you to come back. This book contains themes of death of family members. You have been warned. I'm your producer, Ashlyn.
I'm your host, Sydney.
I'm that one girl that you block on that dating app a long time ago because of all the overzealous sexual comments that I made in your DMs.
Now get ready to get raunchy.
It's so good to be back.
Lauren, I missed you.
Hey, Sydney.
Hey, Lauren.
I have a question for you.
Oh, a question? It's been a while.
I know. Are you ready? It's going to be my raunchiest one yet.
Okay.
How's your new year been?
Aw, thanks. It's been pretty good. Pretty good. Just living life and trying out some new things. What about you? How's your new year been?
Good. You know, I definitely have missed recording with you lovely ladies.
Yes.
I learned a lot recently about the Chinese zodiac, so I feel more well-informed this year. Yeah, which definitely fits within my New Year's resolution to read smut and get knowledge.
There we go. Read smut, get knowledge.
It's the new fuck bitches get money.
Well, that'll be our new tagline on Instagram.
I love it. Yes.
Well, Lauren, I have a question for you.
Oh my God, I'm honored. Okay, yeah.
So
ask away.
Do you know what your Chinese zodiac sign is?
I do, with an asterisk beside that, because in the book that we read for this month or weeks, I don't know, our upload schedule, we learned that you can actually have multiple zodiac signs just based on your hour of birth. I do not know that sign, but I know that I was born in 1999, which is the year of the rabbit. Do you know your zodiac sign?
Coincidentally, I'm also a little rabbit. So the reason I asked this question is because I know you like to ask people what was their birth time, and you liked to ask people about their zodiac signs. And I wanted to know how you kind of felt about this new system that maybe you weren't as familiar with, like this new star system that you weren't as familiar with.
I love that question. Context for listeners, I was referred to unironically as the astrology girl back in high school because I used to use astrology as a substitute for a lack of personality, in which I used to compartmentalize and characterize people solely based on one sign. It was great. You make a lot of friends that way. But yes, so I've only been loosely familiar with the Chinese zodiac signs, and actually only within the past year have become familiar with them because I actually, for the first time ever, got to participate in a Lunar New Year celebration with a friend of mine. Yeah, so this friend of mine, she is Chinese and, you know, celebrates Lunar New Year every year. Her and her family does. And it was really awesome to sort of also celebrate with her in the year of the rabbit, which was both of our years. And I know one of the customs that she did and participated in that year was that she intentionally would wear red on the day of Lunar New Year and for a lot of events moving forward that year as like a sign of luck. It's supposed to bring in like good fortune. And she actually like ended up accomplishing something really big that year. And she told me she would exclusively wear like red socks or something like that, like during the moment she was interviewing for this thing. So it was really cool to see that happen. But apart from that, I know nothing.
That is really, really cool. I genuinely did not know that. But that leads us into me introducing the book we read, which is Lunar Love by Laura Kung Jessen. Going into this, I learned quite a bit about the Chinese zodiac because I myself was not familiar with it. And I found it very interesting, and I found this book to be pretty enjoyable. And now we're going into general info, I guess.
Just like wine, we just get finer with age. We're really, really getting the hang of this.
You know what? I'm a little rusty. We took a little bit a break from recording, so let me try my best here. All right, so kind of some general info that you need to know about Lunar Love by Laura Kung Jessen. This book was first published on January 10th of 2023, and kind of crazy. Like, this is an insane. I want to say like accomplishment for this author, but her debut book was published alongside Book of the Month in the month of January of 2023, which absolutely insane. Congratulations to Lauren about that. Like, that is insane.
Yeah, 100%.
And then literally within the next month, a article was published in Cosmopolitan calling Lunar Love the 2023 in February of 2023, saying best romance book to read in 2023, which is crazy for a debut author. So, like, applause to the author for that. But some more general info we have. The book averages at a 3.5 stars on Goodreads out of 10,624 reviews as of this recording. And on Storygraph, we have, surprisingly, a very similar number at 3.4 out of 2,526.
Interesting.
And the book is 337 pages.
Slay. Did you as a warning to listeners, that's my new clutch word. Sid, did you read the paper copy? Did you listen to this book? What format did you read it in?
So I was in ebook because my book got lost in transit. So Kindle all the way for that.
Get into it. Okay, and how did you feel about reading it on ebook? Like, what was that general experience like?
So I am just getting into ebooks as a reader. Controversial opinion. I never really liked ebooks because I liked having like the physical, like being physically able to hold a book. Mm-hmm. But now for some reason it's kind of the opposite, and I find it holding a book to be more daunting sometimes, which is interesting. But I enjoyed highlighting and like looking at it. I do wish it was an easier system in which I could like look at my highlights and notes and reviews, but I was also scared to take notes because I don't know how public they are. But from what I understand, Lauren, you listened to this, didn't you?
I did, as we say in the research world, a mixed methods approach. Yeehaw, nerd alert. I started reading the paper copy of this book. I actually found it on a shared library bookshelf we have at my apartment complex. So someone had what I assume got it as a book of the month selection, and then like put it on the shelf when they were done reading it. And I happened to pick it up just out of curiosity, like almost a year ago at this point. It's just kind of been collecting dust, and was really excited when we chose this for a book this month. But as I started reading it, I was like, okay, like, this is all right. This is okay. What if I just tried the audiobook? And thankfully the audiobook is free on Spotify and Audible. So if y'all are interested, go check it out. I actually highly recommend the audiobook. The reader for that, I believe her first name is Rachel. She slayed. Rachel, you ate. You left no crumbs. Devoured. You deserve an Oscar. Because there's a scene, this is no spoilers, there's a scene where the main character later on in the novel will cry. Homegirl acted it out. It was really great. And I believed it. And I definitely highly recommend anyone who's interested in reading this to listen to the audiobook, so long as you put it on 1.5 speed. The initial speed is a little slow.
Don't do what Ashlyn does and put it at 3.25, because Ashlyn, you are a beast when it comes to audiobooks.
Horrified.
Yeah,
Horrified.
That's scary. But you know what? I think this will be a very interesting conversation, considering you listened to it and I read it via ebook. So it'll be interesting to kind of hear both of our opinions on kind of tone and all of that. So I'm intrigued. So let's kind of get into it. Let me introduce some of our characters that we've got. So we have Olivia, or Liv Hong Christensen. She can be categorized as very headstrong, traditionalist, and very, very stubborn.
Hee hee.
And then we have Bennett O'Brien, our other love interest. He's chill, charming, and I would say analytical. He's very much in the numbers. He is I guess you could say, like, left-brained oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Popo, who love that little old lady. She is Liv's grandmother, and she's the one who created Lunar Love. I love that little old lady. Let me love the little old lady. Stop laughing at me.
I love how you said that. Go on.
I love her. And then we've got. So we don't really hear much of them, but we have May and Dale Zong. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering these names. But they are the owners of the Lucky Monkey, and they're a prominent bakery within the story. We have Colette, who is Liv's old BFF. We have Alicia Lynn, work BFF with Liv. We also have Randall Zhu, who is a work bestie. I just put work bestie for both of them. Alicia is also one of the matchmakers at Lunar Love. We have Auntie Lydia. She is the predecessor of Lunar Love, so she took over after Popo gave her the business. And then last, we have Nina and Asher, and Nina is Liv's sister, and Asher is her fiance. And then kind of general themes. I only wrote down 2, which I think you guys will find funny. Mm-hmm. We have enemies to lovers / rivals to lovers, because that's what this is advertised as. It's a rivals to lovers. And then opposites attract.
All right. Yeah.
I also argue this is fast burn, not slow burn. Some people are arguing it's slow burn. I'm like, you're wrong.
No, 100%. That is, when we get into the weeds of the notes that I left, we're going there.
Yeah. I also will clarify, I did like a lot of aspects of this book, and I'm not trying to hate on it too hard. So I just want to put that out there, because I did genuinely like some parts of it, but there were parts where I was ready for it to be over.
Yeah, I think all of us are similar minded about this book this time around. So I'm really excited to discuss and hear everyone's thoughts about it. I feel like normally when we review books, there's a little more back and forth in the text group chat that we all have about it. Which, speaking of, just for listeners at home that are keeping track of our group chat pictures and names, our current group chat picture is just like a still of the cover of this book. And it's literally titled, quote, RPH, what do you mean? With a oh my God, I almost said a quotation mark. I can't read. A question mark and an exclamation point. Dying.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, speaking of what do you mean, are we ready to delve into Lunar Love?
I am ready to jump feet first.
Hail first, because we rabbits.
Here we go.
So our book opens, and we're introduced to our main character, Olivia, who, while previously was just an employee of the family-run matchmaking business, Lunar Love, which is matchmaking based on the compatibility of the Chinese zodiac signs, is recently going to be, or soon to be, we should say, going to be named the new owner, taking over from her aunt and then previously from her grandmother, Popo. Now, Lunar Love has been around for quite some time. Like, wasn't it like half a decade or something like that?
Yes, they kept reiterating that it's been about 50 years.
Not half a decade. I meant half a century. Brain is off tonight.
It's okay. You know what? We live for the vibes.
5 years. Lunar Love has been around. Long-standing business. And Olivia is getting a phone call from her mom where they're trying to arrange things for Popo's upcoming birthday party. She's turning 90. We love a golden gal. When Olivia decides to stop by Lucky Monkey, which is that bakery that we mentioned earlier, run by some family friends that are basically like a third set of parents for Olivia. Not a third, a second pair of parents.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going in to buy a sticky bun specifically because a sticky bun is what her grandmother has requested for her birthday. Now, you go in, the selection's already pretty sparse. However, in the grabbing reach for a sticky bun with her tongs, I couldn't quite get my mental imagery down of how this scene would work. I'm going to be so honest, but I assume it was like another pair of tongs comes in to get said sticky bun. I don't know if y'all had different imagery. I don't know what was happening.
Yeah,
and this apparently there's a really attractive man behind this second pair of rival tongs. We're not given much description except for a very blundering attempt to describe his eyes as hazel for like 2 whole pages because she couldn't remember the word hazel. And apparently he's really attractive. He's got a birthmark on his upper cheek. He's tall, really good looking, dresses casual. Tall, dark, and handsome indeed. He's described as dressing like formal, but like not too formal. Like it's like an intentional decision to like dress down. He's
business
really nice
casual.
looking. Business casual. Oh yeah, he's rolling up to the Teams meeting.
Oh my god. You know he's on Teams too. He's not even using Slack.
He's a Teams bro. For sure.
The worst.
I know. But while she meets Hot Guy, they sort of have a back and forth about, I want the sticky bun. No, I want the sticky bun. You don't understand. It's Popo's birthday. And he says, I don't give a fuck who Popo. He doesn't say that. But
no.
Essentially, they go into this like bargaining debate where he's like, I'll give you the sticky bun if you give me this. And yeah, they kind of go back and forth for a while. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It was a little bit.
It was a little bit. And also, listeners, you know what? You can make the assumption, and your assumption will be correct. Yes, this is your love interest.
Good catch. Yes.
Yeah. This is Bennett. This is us meeting Bennett, but we do not know his name is Bennett because they literally go outside afterward and he's like, well, what are you what's your name? And she goes, oh, Olivia, but my friends call me Liv. And he goes, oh, my friends call me asshole. And I'm like,
does not proceed to tell her his name.
No. And I'm like, what the fuck? Okay.
No. And nothing about him gives asshole, for the record. Like,
no, literally nothing about him gives the impression of someone like calling him asshole or him having the nickname asshole.
I guess he's quirky like that. He's quirky like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Sid said, they leave the bakery sort of. It's one of those like, oh my God, I guess we're walking in the same direction. This is awkward kind of things. But they actually end up subtly kind of hitting it off in a way that I don't think she really expected. They go back and forth. Obviously, he learns her name. She learns his name is asshole. And then they sort of depart after this like brief and fleeting connection. He doesn't ask for her number, which will come up later.
Also, the fact that he scoops the icing out of his Swiss roll comes up.
Oh, yeah.
Too often.
I forgot about that. I was imagining almost like one of those Little Debbie Swiss rolls and like someone just like deflowering it with like a spoon.
No, Lauren, no. I'm imagining someone unrolling it.
Listen, they called him asshole for a reason.
Oh God.
I was trying to see why. And that's kind of the end of our opening chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Sid,
can I?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say The last line made me laugh out loud, and that's a line for the first time in my entire career of being a matchmaker. I didn't think to consider this man's zodiac animal sign for a single second. I was like, what?
Guess she's always analyzing people. Are you a horse?
Yeah. Well, we didn't know that yet. Once you get into the character that is Liv, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be upfront about this. I did not like Liv as a character. If the point of the book was to make Liv unlikable, then it was accomplished. But she was just she's just very stubborn throughout the book. And in this first chapter, when she's introduced, you can just tell by the abrasiveness in which she has this interaction with Bennett, who's a stranger to her. And I know it's meant to be like witty banter, like it's meant to be like, oh yeah, I'm like not like other girls, and I have like this quick and sharp banter, and I'm like not afraid to like say what I want. But it just came off as like aggressive for like no reason. And I was like, what the fuck is going on?
So glad you brought this up. I was going to save this for a later chapter when it comes up, like most notably for me. But I also wrote that in my notes of like, there's a lot of sarcastic humor between these two characters. And I think that's really great and can work if you know how to communicate sarcasm well via text, because I feel like that is a hard thing to do. But the way that it was done in this book, like to signify that in particular Bennett, whenever he like says a sarcastic comment, it'll always just say like he deadpans. And
yeah,
the first couple of times I encountered that, I didn't quite catch that was a joke. Or maybe that was just me, but I really had to be like, oh, he's sarcastic. Okay. And I think for me, my preference would have been to more overtly just be like, you know, say something like his voice is monotone, but his lips betray, you know, a little bit of a smirk or something like that, to just like kind of indicate that a little better instead of just saying he deadpans for like every single dialogue tag. So for me too, it also came off as like aggressive or like weirdly serious at points of time.
Yeah. And I was like, why are we so serious? What's going on?
Why so serious? That was the world's worst Joker impression. Okay.
Moving on to chapter 2.
New year, new me. Oh God. Yeah, so that brings us to chapter 2. We are at Popo's 90th B-Day, which he's also joint celebrating with the Lunar. Wait, no, it's not the Lunar. What was it? There's some other event that she's doubly celebrating with.
No, it is the Lunar New Year, but it's because they're like technically so close that she likes to like.
Yeah. I thought it was, but then in the timeline of the book, they also are like in fall, I'm pretty sure.
Are they in fall?
Yeah, because I think most of this happens in October.
So the Halloween party is shortly after this. So it's got to be like late summer. I thought that the thing that was going on was the announcement of Lunar Love being passed on to Olivia.
Yeah, but her grandma likes to celebrate her birthday alongside something. I remember reading that in the book.
Me too. Let me quickly
write that down.
Let me quickly find it. I'm on chapter 2. Yep, here we go. And because Popo's birthday usually falls within range of the Moon Festival, that's what it is. She prefers to celebrate birth at the same time. Okay.
We knew it had something to do with the moon.
Something with the moon. But yeah, so there's, you know, simultaneously there's like themes of the moon. And as we kind of mentioned, there's
before you continue, why is there so much moon iconography? There's so much. I understand the moon is a big deal. Oh my God, it was oversaturated at points. Same thing with like hearts. Like, oh my God, if I had to read one more thing, like something was heart-shaped or like something represented love, I was gonna puke.
Yeah, I think it was one of those cases where I do think the imagery was a little bit over the top of like, almost like this is going to sound so mean. I don't mean it to be, but I can't think of anything else to say. Like beating your readers over the head with like, this is what the book is about.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little, yeah. But, you know, Moon Festival.
Oh, God.
We got the Moon Festival. So they're celebrating this, but also there's a subplot at this birthday party that Popo wants to officially announce to the family that Olivia will be taking over Lunar Love officially. Basically, this whole chapter is kind of just like dialogue exchange and establishing who's who within the family dynamic. We meet, you know, Olivia's sister Nina, who I kind of got the impression was very much like almost like a motherly figure in a way of like always making sure things are in order, very like not controlling, but just like likes things in a certain way.
And then I found out Nina is the younger sister, and I got confused.
I know. I know. She's the younger sister, apparently. You know, we meet the parents. Her dad is of a Scottish lineage. And so, like, you know, she talks a lot about being both Chinese and also having the Scottish influence. We also meet her Aunt Lydia, who basically engages with her in a conversation about like dating apps and how dating apps are like basically gonna like kill the dating world because it's like, I don't remember exactly what she said, but it's basically like, you know, cheap and quick and there's not like, you can't verify who's on it and things like that.
Yeah.
Really
the
strange.
lack of like human connection.
Yeah, exactly. And then basically all there is to say about this is at the end of the chapter, they officially announce that Olivia is getting handed Lunar Love. And there's kind of a heavy expectation that she's going to try and like sort of fix the lack of clientele and success rates they've been having lately because of the influence of like technology and dating apps. And they want to sort of draw upon a younger clientele in their business, which obviously is going to eventually create a lot of pressures on Olivia as the newfound runner. But she gets a cute little moon charm. It's a crescent moon that her Popo bought with her first ever, I think, like earnings from Lunar Love back when she first established it. And it's supposed to be the good luck charm that we will see throughout the story.
Yeah, and it's very sweet. I will say what I loved a lot about this chapter, what I loved about it was the introduction of Chinese culture, because I'm not fully I do not fully know about Chinese culture and like their practices. So like, for example, I learned all about Cookie Day. Because they mentioned it quite a bit and I had no clue what it was. And apparently it's a marriage practice where the husband's family would bring like cookies and sweets to the bride's family to like basically sweeten the deal or like make the pain of like losing her a little less. But it's like meant to be a big celebration. And I liked the introduction of like talking about the Moon Festival, and they talked about Lunar New Year a lot, and this is when we start learning more about the Chinese zodiac and things are getting mentioned. And it's just really cool to read a story about a non-white person and those parts of their culture being included within the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I also really liked, I actually wanted to see more of this personally, but I really liked the mentions we got about both Bennett and Olivia coming from two different cultures, two different like racial backgrounds, and sort of struggling, like stretching sort of like the middle line between like feeling too Asian in certain circles, but not Asian enough in others. And I really liked sort of the resonance that the two of them had over that and sort of the commentary that was like peppered throughout different events in the story. But I almost wish I got to see more of that, because I think that was one of the things that truly made them feel really three-dimensional to me. And gave their connection a lot more validity. But you know where my thoughts are on that.
Yep.
So chapter 3 is where Lauren's going to go off a little bit. So chapter 3, Olivia's like, oh my God, my first day on the job, and I'm going to the matchmaking love conference thing. That's held every year, and that's apparently a really big deal for like anybody invested in love, whether that's like marketing and sales or business, or like people like me who are matchmakers. And she's all excited because she's like, it's a melding of minds, and like we're all gonna learn from each other's experience, and it's gonna be so good. Homegirl shows up and rejects every single product and ideology that contrasts with her own. And I'm like, what's the point of a conference? That I'm a research girly. I go to conferences pretty regularly to present my own research and listen to others and network. She did none of that. She did none.
Also, did you love that we found out later that she's a psychology major? That's what she majored in.
Oh, I know. I heard that on the audiobook and I fully had to hit pause and put my head in my hands.
Yeah, I figured you would.
I said, give me a job like that so I don't have to get a PhD to sustain myself, please.
Yeah. I found it. I thought the same thing. Like, this is really where Olivia's stubbornness really starts shining through.
Me too.
And she was so stubborn. And like, that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, what's the point of you being there if you're not going to listen to other people's pitches or like understand what's your competition? Or, like, understand what other people are doing,
Yeah. And then to also take that and then also to like argue with people was crazy to me. I have never gone to a conference and been like, you're wrong.
Actually.
And I've never seen anyone do that.
Yeah, so for context readers, basically the chapter opens with Liv sitting in a talk with some person named Dr. Goodman. Don't know what they're a doctor of. Don't know what she's specialized in.
They're prestigious, whoever they are.
Yeah, whoever they are. But the person asks about compatibility, and surprise, a tall, dark, and mysterious man in the back pipes up and says basically that opposites attract. And Liv's like, no, they don't. And then she like argues with this tall, dark, and mysterious man. Hey, spoilers. That's Bennett. Spoilers for everyone involved.
I'm assuming you were like me and you immediately clocked that. You're like, okay, it's Bakery Boy. Like, this is asshole.
I clocked it immediately. I was like, it's gotta be the same dude.
And the fact that she didn't blew my mind.
Yeah, that was something. I did write down, what does Dr. Goodman study? What is her reason of authority? I need to know. I want to know. Just that little bit more detail.
Oh my God. You saying that makes me remember something. She doesn't even, because she's the one that poses the question to the audience. It's like a question of like, does compatibility really matter or something like that? To which that's when Olivia and Bennett are butting heads. She never, one, moderates the conversation. Two, never really talks about why she brought the question up. There was no point to it. We just move on in the scene.
Yeah, she just goes, and anyway, and you're like, I'm so confused. I also did write down, you'll find this funny. Liv is so close-minded. Maybe that's why I don't like her. That's a note I wrote
down. I basically wrote that in the same text, different font. For this chapter. I said, why was this whole chapter a giant eye roll? You were supposed to be excited over this conference. Girl, get a grip.
Oh my God. Jeez Louise.
You know what else tipped me off in this chapter?
Is it the next sequence after they've left the area and now so they're on their lunch break and then suddenly they hear this dark and mysterious man's voice booming, being like, hey everyone, look at my app.
Zodiac Cupid. Cupid. That's how I'm saying it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's Zodiac Cupid. I don't know. Chinese zodiacs. Dating app using the Chinese zodiacs. And Liv gets so pissed.
She is so pissed off. And she isn't in this chapter that she hatches the idea to like intentionally match with this guy and try to like suss out the details of his business model and like bring ruin upon him.
It's either that one or it's the next one, which I was like, oh my God.
Oh yeah, I think I understand, right? I understand to a degree of like, oh, I have a small family owned business that's already being threatened with like hungry real estate agents trying to gentrify Chinatown, right? But it like there's steps that you can get before it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
In trying to take down the big man. You know what I mean? It's not this.
It's not this. It's not fake dating. It's not. That's not how you do it. No, it's the next chapter when she decides that she's gonna like match with him on the app. Because it's revealed he's on the app himself. Because he believes in his product. But yeah, she's pissed because she's just like, well, apps take away from like human matchmaking. And like I understand like why she's threatened, because obviously she doesn't want to lose like her family business that she's grown up with, but just the way she's her own antagonist.
No, I know.
Like Bennett is not the problem. The Bennett is not the issue. But she makes him the issue.
She jumps to a lot of conclusions throughout the progression of this story, and I think this is the first where she's gonna jump to the conclusion that he's this evil, power-hungry, like Silicon Valley type guy who's just trying to make a quick buck off of her business model,
or like her traditions and her like belief system, which I would definitely get with an initial reaction.
Yeah.
But when she kept having that reaction throughout the book after knowing Bennett, I was like, girl!
She also, I mean, chapter 4 can be summarized literally in one sentence. Like, she literally goes on like a wine drunk, like delusional, like, I don't know, main character syndrome type moment with her cat named Pino. Crazy name for a cat. I kind of like it.
She never picks up again.
I think he's mentioned one more time. She hangs out with Pino and is talking to him the entire chapter and watching. It feels weird. It gave me that like one meme of the guy who has like the board behind him and all the red strings. Like, because she on her TV she has like news coverage of Zodiac.
No, it's that, and then it's a random ocean documentary, which keeps getting mentioned throughout the book, and I'm like, why do we keep going back to this? I don't like it.
It's the ocean documentary on the TV. It's scrolling through the Zodiac Cupid. It's making the Zodiac Cupid profile all at once, and I'm like, how many tabs do you have open?
And then she just finds Bennett as B.O.B., which is Bennett O'Brien.
I could not separate myself from the band that wrote Airplanes. The entire time. I could not stop thinking of it.
And then they like match. Yeah. What's up, Ashlyn?
The thing about the ocean documentary that really got me was that it was about a parasite, and that she made the parasite her phone screensaver.
Yes! I forgot I mentioned that in my notes. I was like, what the? Why are we making this screensaver?
Was it like a bacterial parasite? Like she made a bacteria?
It's like a parasite that lives on a fish or like on the inside of its mouth or something. And what the fuck are you talking about? But she was like, I need to be the parasite. I need to feed off his success. And I was like, this is super villain level.
I in my villain era, you know, like people will say that. This is in my villain era. Anytime y'all see me post pictures of parasites, aquatic bacteria, you know I'm on my villain shit.
But they go on a date. Well, they plan the date.
Yeah.
But she purposely, but like the whole thing is like she's mad because she put stuff in her profile to match with him purposefully. And she's like, see, this doesn't like match us because he's a rat and I'm a horse.
Not follow her logic at any point during this chapter.
There's no logic.
Because they spend a lot of time talking about the algorithm, but it's like nonsensical to me of like she's trying to poke holes in the algorithm, but I don't know. I was lost in the sauce. But yeah, they go to a cooking class that she pays for. She arranges. He shows up. He's like bakery girl. And she's like asshole. Learns that his real name is not B.O.B. Airplanes. It's Bennett O'Brien. And he learns that her real name's Olivia, not Liv, which make a connection, dude. And they, you know, start like making, I believe it's mooncakes is what they start making. And he's like, oh, hey, I'm a good chef. I have a recipe from this. I promise it'll be better. And she goes, No, Bob. You see here, tradition is what is most important. We signed up for this class and therefore abide by its all-binding laws of mooncake making, and I refuse to step out of line. And so he relents. They make some mid-mooncakes, and the whole time she's grilling this man about Zodiac Cupid, and not in a nice way either. And one of the things that I wrote here that I absolutely hated, I said twice, Olivia says the opposite of what she means in dialogue with Bennett. An example, quote, where did you get the idea for Zodiac Cupid from? Like, who does that in real life? Who actually says the polar opposite insulting thing that they're thinking and then has to quickly go, no one does that. And it happens twice in this chapter, and it gave me the ick. This was also the chapter where I mentioned I have trouble discerning when the characters are joking, because Bennett tries to cope with a lot of this atrocious date with sarcastic humor. And it was not landing with me. And I don't think it was landing with Liv either. I gotta be honest. But long story short, they go through the date. They claim it's going okay. I didn't see that. I thought actually it was quite painful to watch. I thought they hated each other. And across the room, Olivia spots her old best friend, Colette, walking into the baking class, and she immediately freaks out and tries to dodge her. She doesn't want to see her. Apparently there's some weird unknown bad tension between the two of them, something that happened in the past. She tells Bennett, oh, it's my ex, because Colette's there with a man. And Bennett, being the good Samaritan he is, covers for her by like spilling stuff on his salmon, also known as coral, shirt that he's wearing.
They literally bicker about that. I'm like, why?
They could not get past that. And then he like goes outside and she waits for him. They go to get ice cream and she's like, wow, maybe it is kind of hot after all, but I'm still trying to thwart his plan to destroy my business.
I know. I was like, is he like a cartoonish like businessman who's like trying to carry a damsel in distress onto a train track, but he's got like like, oh my gosh.
I'm like, it's okay to think he's hot. You can.
Yeah.
Oh
you can think. I did write that down. You can think he's hot. But like, I don't know. The whole thing just felt really weird. Like, it just felt like, yeah, but he said something along the lines of, oh, you know, our date's going well. I'm like, what are you talking about? It sounds like
that's exactly what I thought.
It is. So honestly, I wrote in this part, I'm like, the only enemies to lovers or rivalry to lovers thing that's happening here is strictly just from Olivia.
Yes.
Like,
it's all one-sided.
It's all one-sided. And I don't understand why. Why she's being so mean.
I don't either. And she didn't even get any information about Zodiac Cupid at the end of that date. Like,
no.
All she found out was that
she learned she learned that he got the idea from his mom. No, that was in a later date. That was later. Never mind. I'm wrong. He did, but he said he learned about it. What I did like and what I did highlight about this chapter is when it's unfortunate, but Bennett basically goes on the defensive towards Liv because Liv is being passive aggressive and is like, and he basically like says straight up to her, like, I don't have to prove how Asian or Chinese I am to you.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh yeah, I'm being an asshole. Because she's like, I also have to do that sometimes. And I'm like, yeah.
I know. And if I don't make a mistake, like, she really doesn't say anything about that to him other than like, I can understand that. And like just moves on.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, come on. He's throwing you a bone here. But
he's being very sweet and being open with you. And you're just like, yeah, I get it.
I would leave a date if someone immediately tried poking holes in like my entrepreneurial like business that I'm trying to start up. I would immediately leave. That is so rude and uncouth.
Especially if it's like based within ideals within your own culture, and they're just like, well, do you actually? It's kind of like someone when you're wearing a band tee and someone's like, oh, do you actually know that band? Name your favorite song.
It's exactly that energy. Oh my god!
It's all of the NFL people right now who are like hating on women who were just getting into football because of Taylor Swift, and they're like, "Oh, well, who's your favorite player?" No, not Travis Kelce. You can't say that.
Hate it.
It's like, shut the fuck up. People are interested in your thing, so just like leave them alone.
I know.
Liv is gatekeeping, gaslighting, and girl bossing.
Absolutely. And I'll be so real. This is going to be something that comes up later too. There are certain moments in this book and certain actions that Liv in particular will take in this book that feel very millennial coded to me. I don't know if you felt that at any point, but there's also references.
I'm silently nodding, listeners.
Yes, there's one chapter in here where they unironically make jokes about the word GOAT, or the acronym GOAT, greatest of all time, which is something I have not said since I was in high school. I'm fairly certain. I am years out of high school, for the record. And this book was published in 2023. Like, I was very shocked to find that out.
I did also write down, like, I know the purpose of what the author was saying. Oh, sorry, Ashlyn, I cut you off. I didn't mean to. I know that, like, the purpose of, like, the whole thing with Liv being so stringent on the cooking class is to, like, represent tradition and all that, but she comes off just as so annoying.
Yeah, it's like, not tradition that she's even arguing for. It's like rule abiding, which is not inherently tradition,
which is not the same thing. And I just wrote like this man is just trying to impress you because he wants to like show off that he's really good at cooking or like making this thing. I did also write down though, I said, but also Bennett, you did pay for a cooking class, follow the recipe.
That's so true. That's valid. I didn't pick that up. Yes, Ashlyn?
Okay, so they're at a cooking class where the teacher says, recipes on the board, do what you want.
Yeah. What is the instructor's job?
Like, apparently they'd already mixed the ingredients or something. And they had like printed some stuff out, but I was like, yeah, this is a little weird.
I've been to cooking classes before, and like, you know, the instructor is like walking around, making sure, you know, giving advice and answering questions. Nah. Yeah. She's like, also, think for yourself.
Also, typically in cooking classes, you're all making 1/3 thing, not five separate dishes. I was like, you know what? Maybe I haven't been to enough. You know what? I'm not going to hate on that. That's nitpicking. I'm not going to be a hater.
Listen, if I was in that class and I didn't get the mooncake table, I would have been pissed. Mooncakes are delicious.
I've never had a mooncake. Oh, I should try one.
They're really good. They're really good.
Okay.
But yeah. Chapter 6. Really, the only two things to highlight here is that we start getting the real estate vultures. Yes.
Before we continue, I wrote down the cute line. There was one cute line within this chapter, and I was like, okay, this might be a little bit redeeming. That's chapter 5.
What was it?
It was when Liv was like, thank you for like falling over yourself for me. And he goes, it was an honor to fall for you. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I was okay with that line. It didn't quite land for me, but I see the appeal.
Hey, with everything else like the other lines we've had so far.
Grasping for straws.
Yeah.
That's okay. Speaking of grasping at straws, the real estate agent is really trying to get on Love's door. This is, I believe her name is Caroline or something. It doesn't really matter.
I didn't even write it down because she picked it up like twice.
You're so good. There's a real estate agent that's like got like a yappy little dog in her purse that she carries around, and she's like, "Hey, are you the owner?" And I don't know if she sounds like that, but yeah, you know, obviously, basically just wanting to buy the property. He's like, "You could get this much money for it. Like, give me a call." And like, doesn't even get Olivia a second to like say no firmly or really argue and butt in. She makes her grand exit, and after that, Olivia is still stewing, despite the fact that apparently her and Bennett had a good date over Zodiac Cupid. And so, as like a venting, like do not send diary type thing, she types out a heated, like almost article that she would send to like a, you know, a journal article or whatever of like how all the reasons why Zodiac Cupid is invalid and like trash and not gonna work. And then she writes a real version for the article that like is meant to promote Lunar Love. Except that she gets Alicia, I don't remember her name, to send it for her. And somehow, some way, unless this girl does not name her files clearly enough, Alicia sends the venting letter.
Okay, so apparently she thought she deleted the venting email and then put on the server the correct one. I literally wrote down, I'm calling it the venting email is on the company server.
Yes. I don't know. I would not play with fire like that. If you're going to draft a scathing email that you don't intend to send, maybe just leave it in a Word doc. Like, don't have it in your email drafts to just click send on, because I do that accidentally sometimes.
Like, oh my God. Okay, you know what was funny? I thought the scathing email was going to be the climax of the book. Like, you know, like third quarter breakup thing. And then literally next chapter, nope. It's posted. Like,
I know.
What?
That's a great point. I didn't consider it like that, but I would have preferred it if it was that way. Like as like a third act kind of rising action or climax kind of thing.
Yeah. When we get to the whole podcast thing,
oh yeah,
which is I think in the next 2 chapters.
That's gonna be meta. I'm kidding.
Yeah. When we get to the podcast thing, I want to talk about my assumptions for the third quarter breakup.
Go for it. Yeah. Remind me. Definitely.
I will.
Yeah. So scathing email goes out. It's already published. Oopsie doopsie.
Whoops.
But anyway, Olivia's out scouting the streets. Because I think she's literally just wandering around like basically like downtown LA because she's doing like single scouting. Is that what she calls it? Where like it's a thing where like basically in their massive database, if they feel like there's a client they have where there's like nobody that they feel confident they can match them with, they literally will go to like events and public spaces trying to like get people, which I appreciate the hustle. I respect it. I would rather die than do that.
Yeah.
That is so
I also find it interesting because they also do mention that the whole database they have isn't really a database. It's like a bunch of filing cabinets with a bunch of old folders. And I'm like, well, I'm sitting here being like, well, no wonder you guys are struggling with money.
I know. Actually, my first ever job was as an intern at a law firm where I had to shred and like create digital files of all of their old case documents from like the 1990s to transfer them to online because they literally had their entire basement full wall to wall of just like paper and folder copies. It was crazy. I got $7.25 an hour.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm bitter. It's fine. And now I do this.
Yeah.
We're moving up in the world.
We don't get paid at all.
We actually lose money because we pay $1 a month to Craig, our recording software. Yeah. Ashlyn saying we.
It's me.
Ashlyn is out $1 a month every month.
We love you, Ashlyn.
Please sponsor us. So she's out scoping the streets and then randomly is like, hey, didn't Bennett say he has an office space down here? Let me see if I can infiltrate and like scope out some secrets. And so she like texts him and is like, hey, I'm in the area, want to meet up. He basically, they meet up. He lets her up in this office and turns out it's a really, really small team running Zodiac Cupid. Most of who... My cat is leaving comments on our Word doc. Most of who are kind of irrelevant. There's one guy named Elmer that sort of plays a role later on in the story, but it's whatever.
A little bit, not really.
Yeah. But while they're there, they're basically discussing like all these, like outcomes and like new features that they're wanting to test out. And literally live as they're standing there, they find the bad scathing article that Olivia had wrote under Cake Girl is her pseudonym or whatever.
I don't know why. That was never explained. Why?
No. Also, she just made mooncakes with this guy. So wouldn't you choose something a little less tied?
I don't know. I think Alicia chose it, I think is what I remember or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think she just put something down. I don't remember. Anyway, yeah, continue.
Yeah. Obviously, Bennett's crushed. He tries to kind of hide it, but, in this moment, seeing, this human man actually being upset over the harmful words that she submitted to a journal, she feels a little bad. And she's like, I really hurt him. I didn't mean it.
She's like, I'm sorry. Hey, Bennett, it's going to be okay. This is one bad person.
I know, she's fully consoling this man as if she didn't just write this thing. It's like, she does.
Sorry. Yeah, she does feel bad, but I'm like, I really can't feel bad for you right now.
No, it's embarrassing. I would shrivel and die on the spot if this happened to me.
Yeah. And then the big thing too is that on Saturday, she's going to go record a podcast.
She is. Yes, it's supposed to be a women's only panel of like love and general matchmaking discussions, I believe, and she's going to be there representing Lunar Love.
Mm-hmm. But the reason that's such a big deal is because Bennett's like, hey, you want to go out on another date?
Tee-hee.
So she's like, well, I can't tomorrow, but tonight I'm free.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, great, I'll pick you up in a couple hours in my really beat up car that apparently looks unsafe to drive.
Yeah, and we're like, okay.
I know. But yeah, he picks her up to go to a drive-in movie theater, which Ashlyn in her notes for this says, I think I've seen this film before, which is making me laugh.
And I didn't like the ending.
We loved the ending in that book. I don't know about this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically during the movie, which is supposed to be like some witchy like Halloween film that Bennett watches every year.
It's a really good book. 10 out of 10. I actually recommend reading Practical Magic.
Oh, it's real?
Yeah, it's a series. It's a series of books. It's a series of books. And then the first book got turned into a movie. 10 out of 10 recommend. I read them last year.
Oh, shit. I'll put that on my to be read.
There we go.
I mean, if Mr. Bob likes it, right? If Bobby O'Brien likes it or whatever.
Oh my God.
But yeah, instead of actually watching the movie, though, both of them sit in the car and Bennett laments about his rough childhood in which his mom died at the age of 6.
Sorry, I really wanted to sing Dead Mom from Beetlejuice.
Mommy issues. I'm kidding. Yeah. He talks about his dead mom, but he also mentions that like later on he like read her diary and feels guilty about it, but through reading this diary he like learned her personal investment in like the Chinese zodiac, and that like inspired him to want to learn more about it, to sort of engage with something she's interested in, but also to learn more about her since she died when he was so young. He doesn't really know what she's like, and his dad, furthermore, doesn't talk about her because it's just so painful for him, that loss. And so obviously this stirs something in Olivia because she's like, wow, he's a human with emotions.
Yeah. I also wrote down, damn, Liv, you made fun of his dead mom.
I know. Oh my God. And the last thing I wanted to note for this chapter that I had to write down is, I put 2 things. I said, quote, this is the first time I really feel for Bennett as a character. I actually really liked the justification for the app and his interest in the Chinese zodiac being tied to his mom. The next note, how old is this book? There's an unironic goat reference. What the fuck?
Yep.
My only notes. And then my opening note for chapter 9 is Olivia's a hypocrite, so I'm ready for this. Ah, man. So,
okay.
Basically.
One before we start.
Yes.
This is very funny.
Yes.
At this point in the book, there was a switch for me, and this is when I started kind of liking the book.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah. And I wanted to point that out because I wrote down, like, this is the turning point in which I started genuinely picking up the book without writing notes by accident. because I typically write notes when I'm reading these things. But I literally wrote down, okay, I will admit, I jumped to the point of them seeing each other, like without like taking notes.
I know what's interesting about that? I wrote the start of chapter 11 is where I started disliking the book.
Interesting.
Because I actually was vibing with it until then. I was like, this isn't so bad. This is so bad. I didn't hate.
See, I was not vibing.
Really?
I was not. I did not vibe with like the first quarter of this book. But then here's the funny thing. Within the other last quarter of the book, so literally half the book, I disliked it again.
Oh, how empires rise and fall.
Yeah. We'll get there.
That's interesting that we had the exact same time point but different opinions. I'm intrigued to hear what yours are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is the day of the podcast appearance that Olivia is supposed to go on. And bear in mind, listeners, it was supposed to be a women's only panel. That's the information she's been fed repeatedly, because this whole time she's been secretly paranoid that Bennett is going to show up, as, you know, obviously Zodiac Cupid is on the rise. And she finds out when she arrives at studio. Do what?
I said, who knew, listeners, that this would be a little hint in the future.
Teehee, we call it foreshadowing. I mean, foreplay. But yeah, so she finds out when she gets to set that there's been a last minute replacement of one of the panelists. And as she's discussing this with the podcast host named Marcus, she hears a very familiar and sultry voice coming up from behind her. And of course, it's Bennett. He's the replacement. Yeah. So this is kind of an interesting moment. I will say this chapter intrigued me. Like, this isn't the chapter that made me lose interest, but it really intrigued me because we basically find out, obviously the jig is up. Like, Bennett, you know, Olivia's like, oh my God, I have to confess who I am. I'm the owner of Lunar Love. I've been trying to take him down. Actually, Bennett has known who Olivia is this entire time and has always known that Olivia was lying to him.
Yep.
The craziest shit, though, is that Olivia's reaction was not immediate relief. It was not, oh, thank God you're an understanding person and this is not awkward. It's, so you were trying to be in control of our relationship dynamic this entire time?
Yeah. It's like, where did that come
from? Ma'am, weren't you doing the same thing?
And he points that out. He points out the hypocrisy. He's like, you did the exact same thing.
And she's like, but this is different. This is why I never would go out with someone who's not my.
Yeah. Girl. And also on top of it, too, I'm just like, girl, the only rivalry that is in this book is just from you. Yeah. Like, you are literally the only person that's mad and being like antagonistic.
I know.
Like in another book, if we had Bennett's POV, you would be the villain.
Except she's too hot. So we're gonna
but yeah, like he also like made like a nice comment to her and she's like, what a jerk. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's being nice to you.
This changes nothing. And honestly, for me, if I were in her shoes, I would be totally relieved because I'd be like, wow, we were both doing the same thing. I don't feel like such an asshole. Like, clearly he's fine associating with me knowing all of this and we're great. No.
Like, he let me come in and see his business knowing that I am a competitor.
Yes, I know. But we actually find out that Bennett knew of Olivia because of Popo, which I didn't say this at the time, but I have written in my notes for chapter 2, because in chapter 2, at some point during the party, Popo was like, I have someone to match up with you, child. I called it at that point. I said, Bakery Boy is definitely the guy Popo wanted to match her with, ... So I saw this. I was like,
oh, wow, you clocked that. I didn't clock that.
I think it's because this book felt very tropey and formulaic to me, and that all of the reveals, except for this one, I will say this one took me off guard. All the reveals, I like pretty much knew they were coming. I think it just felt very
I will say too, like, I don't understand why she's such a butt. I don't get it. I don't understand
she's a horse.
why she's. I guess she is an ass. I know that's not correct, but I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave my bad joke here. But I did also write down, I'm like, is it bad? I kind of want Bennett to hate her.
No, yeah, I agree.
I wanted him to be angry. We got a little bit of that. We got a little taste.
A smidgen.
And then Bennett was very kind again. I'm like, how can you be mean to this man? I don't get it. He has a right to be angry.
I know.
But then they go on to the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I was also going to say, the moment that he does get a little bit of that anger is because in this conversation, he finds out that Olivia wrote the article. That was the only bit that he was not aware of previous to this. Yeah.
And what's so they do go up on stage and then they start airing out like all of their issues, but like on stage in front of a live studio audience. And I'm like, I'm like, geez, Louise. But like, she just shows to everyone how much of an asshole she is.
I know. And she comes up with this really like gameplay bet idea with Bennett of like, I want to prove who has the better business. If you utilizing Lunar Love services, if I can get you to fall in love with someone, then, you know, basically Lunar Love will get a whole bunch of like promo and publicity through the podcast. And then he agrees on the grounds that he'll try to do the same for her, but using Zodiac Cupid.
And it also has to be in a month. They both have to fall in love within a month.
Which maybe we're speed running this shit.
I don't know. We're not speed running.
Also, when they're airing their grievances on the podcast, one of the hosts steps in and is like, just a reminder that this is live and will not be can't be edited or whatever. That is the choice you're making. You could edit it.
You could. But why would you for the drama?
I don't know what service you're using.
Guys, it's reviewed later that this was their 13th episode, and I was like, how did you get such a big podcast after 13 episodes?
It's because Marcus is so cunty slay. Like, the audiobook reader for Marcus was like, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder that we are live on the air. And I was like, this is amazing. You're eating this.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So for the sake of publicity and because they, I guess, hate each other now, whatever. Chapter 11 is where Lauren decided maybe this book isn't for me.
No, that was chapter 9. We're going on to chapter 10 now.
Oh, sorry. The numbers are messed up in the doc because of my cat.
Oh.
You will see.
Understood.
Chapter 10.
Oh, here, wait. Before we continue, can I talk about what I thought was going to happen in the third act?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay. So up until this chapter, I thought the article would be like the antithesis, like the climax, basically, because it'd be like, oh, well, we can't publish this for a while. They would fall in love and then it would be released. And she's like, oh, shit. Then that would be like their major breakup moment. Because he's like, how could you like ever write this about me? And she like tries to explain and he's just like over all of her shit. I also kind of wish this podcast, like, confrontation was the third act rather than so early on.
I do too.
Because I feel like that's such a stronger concept than like, oh, well, I'm going to make you fall in love in a month. I thought like the whole thing would be that they're racing to get more numbers before Valentine's Day / Lunar New Year's because they land around the same time. And throughout that, she would like try and gain information before, and then they'd go on the podcast and be revealed it's her, and he'd be like, heartbroken. But then that didn't happen, and it was just we are gonna set up dates for each other to make each other fall in love in a month. And I don't know, I was kind of disappointed. That's when I got disappointed in the story concept. Because after that, I mean, you know they're going to fall in love within a month with each other. You know there's going to be some dramatic thing.
That's so interesting because you saying that is like very close to why I started disliking this book. That's okay. Yeah, we're kind of on a similar wavelength with that for sure.
Okay. So the reason I started liking the book, though, was because within the next 2 chapters, which is chapter 10 and 11, she starts actually opening up and being a kind person and starts like letting down her defenses. And then I'm like, okay, I could be somewhat invested in this relationship then.
That's a good take. That's a good take. I think I noticed that as well, but I think the reason why I dislike the book, it like clouded that for me, unfortunately. Like, I can go ahead and talk about my perspective as well. So this will go into sort of the plot synopsis for chapter 10. But chapter 10 opens with Olivia sending Bennett out on a date with a girl named Harper that, you know, was going to Lunar Love for matchmaking services. And, you know, the whole premise of this is that, like, during the date, she's kind of spying on them. And it's this multifaceted, like, on one hand, I'm really happy that this seems to be going well. They're laughing, you know, they seem really like a good fit together. But she can't seem to stave off her jealousy when things are actually, like, going well between Harper and Bennett. And for me, this is actually where the story started taking a bit of a turn for me. And I wrote it out here. I said, this story to me would be a lot more appealing and a lot less annoying if Olivia wasn't already aware of her attraction to Bennett or vice versa. I'd much rather it be that through this matching process and failed dates, etc., Olivia and or Bennett realize that there's no better match for them than the other. That way, it also tackles the idea of tradition versus non-tradition, compatibility versus opposites attract through trial and error. They can see evidence in real time and be forced to confront their opposing beliefs by slowly building attraction to the other party. Because now it's just me being dragged through several chapters of, quote, you know you like him, so just date him and split the winnings of the podcast contest or call off the competition.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I think that's what dragged down the pacing for me a little bit of, like, they both are so obviously attracted to each other. Like, it feels, I don't know, to me, it just cheapens it, where I'm like, I would be so much more invested if, like, if there's still bitter rivals at this point, like, you no attraction whatsoever.
Yeah, you wanted more actual rivals to lovers where it's still like, maybe he's still showing signs that he hates her, and she's like, oh, and suddenly his eyes like sparkled, and you're like, okay, so she's starting to realize she's attracted to him. You actually wanted more actual true enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers.
Yeah, because I feel like if that's what this story is going to be advertised as, to already establish the attraction between the main characters in literal chapter 1, to me, is not enemies to lovers. It is this guy who has opposing beliefs to me is really hot. And I want them to, like, genuinely resent each other, or at least for one party to, like, genuinely resent the other and be oblivious to their own feelings. But that's just me. Yeah. I'm an AO3 girly to a fault, and I will own up to that. I will own up to that. But yeah, basically during the date, she's like mustache, fedora, sunglasses, spying on them from a different table. And then Bennett runs over. He's like, you know, I see you. I know that you're there. And they sort of like talk, and like, again, sparks fly when he's literally supposed to be on a date with another woman, but it is fine. And it's there that Olivia sort of tells Bennett more honestly about her relationship with Colette, her old friend, where basically she had made a match for Colette through Lunar Love with someone incompatible, and it absolutely ruined her life. Like, literally the girl up and left and like doesn't talk to her or her family anymore. And that's why she's so like staunchly against incompatible relationships, and like clearly they don't work. And I'm like, yeah, one person and like a billion people with one other person, and not everyone's gonna work out just because you have the same astrology sign. Like,
I wrote, oh, so you were a bad friend and that's why she doesn't do incompatible matches. Like, you didn't vet the guy.
True. It must have been bad for her to up and leave the state.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did steal her money. He did steal Colette's money.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah. Oh, well. Oh, well, T.
Okay. Can we go over chapter 11, though, and Popo's confusing characterization, though, real quick?
So the words right out of my mouth.
Can we talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I loved Popo, but I had whiplash every time because I was like, what one are we getting? Are we going to get the one that's so stringent about tradition and following tradition? Or are we getting the one who's like, oh, tradition and compatibility and all that, it's not that big of a deal? I'm like, what? Who?
I could never, at any point in this story, any point, even the end, tell you that Popo was standing on business. I could never tell you that because Popo in every single conversation had different things to say about compatibility. 1 minute she was like, "Oh, our whole business is compatibility. There's nothing better," and the next she's like, "It's not all compatibility."
Yeah,
I literally wrote and said, I said, why is Popo telling her all of this about compatibility and the true importance of it in attraction now when she has already been in the business for a long time and has taken it over? This information feels like withholding things that definitely should have been stated before simply for plot convenience.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this whole chapter is also about Cookie Day and like getting that ready because it's a tradition. So it's like backdrop to a traditional event, which we talked about earlier about what Cookie Day was. And then it's backdrop to Popo being like, tradition's not everything. You're meant to like evolve. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Just Popo losing their marbles. It's Olivia. I wrote, have I ever said how much I hate hypocrisy on this podcast? Because I do. It is my biggest pet peeve in life, in books, you name it. And the whole hypocrisy in this chapter is that Nina takes Olivia up to their old like treehouse thing. I don't know.
Oh my God.
And
yes.
They sit and they talk, and Nina expresses her insecurities about how like basically their entire family is all based in like compatibility, Chinese zodiacs, and she's marrying someone that is not compatible with her according to the Chinese zodiac. And in this conversation, almost verbatim, Olivia is like, but once I got to know Asher, who's the fiance, once I got to know Asher, I realized that you're the exception. She says that. She's like, your compatibility didn't matter. Are you not listening to yourself?
Also, do you remember before this is the big drop that Popo goes, because Liv asks Popo, be like, oh, why did you, Bennett said he knew you, by the way. And he said you matched his parents. We forgot to mention that. He does drop that in the previous chapter when, like, behind stage when they're at the podcast, he does drop that Popo actually matched his parents. But dun, 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 they were not compatible. So she was like, what the fuck's up, Popo?
I know. I don't think Popo reveals that the match between his parents were... Or like, I don't think she reveals the full details in this chapter. I think that's much later. No. But she does talk about how, like, oh, I tried to set you, or like, oh, I've spoken to him before. He was interested in our business because of what happened with his parents. And now he like goes on to make this app because we declined to have a business with him or whatever. It was,
I don't know.
Popo.
But then she's also like defending it, and it's like, I'm so confused.
I also was confused.
I don't know.
I'm like, I understand that we're trying to give sage, older, wizened elder who like has the answers to life and like can help the younger person grow, but it doesn't align with anything we've established about this business or this character up to this point. So. Yeah,
and I wrote down too, I was like, where is Liv getting like all of this stubbornness for tradition from, if not Popo?
Horse.
Like, is it from her aunt? We've barely met and we barely talked to. It's not her mom because her mom didn't follow in the family business. So I wanted to know where this was all coming from. And with how Popo was characterized, it was hard to tell. Because then later on, she's like getting mad at Nina for wearing a white dress to her wedding. Because she wanted her to wear red because that's a traditional Chinese like color because it's meant to represent celebration. And for those who don't know, white represents in Chinese culture like grief and sadness, and is primarily worn at funerals. So,
yeah, and it's extra weird to me when you remember that Popo and Olivia are of the same zodiac sign. Like they're both horses, and yet they read as like entirely different people, which Olivia says to her credit throughout the novel, like not every trait of a zodiac sign will be manifested in every person of that sign. But she also indicates that most of them will. That there's like a running theme between them. And I just feel like that wasn't there.
It feels very picky and choosy. Which, I mean, I'm not going to critique of the Chinese zodiac because you can say the exact same thing about it.
Oh, sure.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to nitpick that. But yeah, it just felt a little nitpicky, like picking what works.
Yeah. Speaking of nitpicky about what works, I also was pissed off with chapter 12 because so Bennett asked Olivia on like, well, it's not supposed to be a date, but like, you know, it is a date. They go out.
Yeah, they go to breakfast.
Yeah, they go to breakfast. And basically he's like trying to show her these new like features of this new feature on the app that he wants to install. And it's like, and basically using peony petals, which are Olivia's favorite flower, by the way. Me too, girl. Peony petals to basically as like a signifier of like how many matches you've had. I think that's what it is. Like,
yeah.
And he says it's supposed to entice people to like, motivate them to use it more. But Olivia actually, with like some very valid criticism, in my opinion, was like, hey, you're trying to gamify this app, and it also may make people really insecure and like try to match up with a bunch of people, not because they're actually interested, but because they want to seem more like appealing on the market because of these. But in that discussion, he like basically like is like, well, you know, other features of the app, like I really just want people to like get more excited about the zodiac. There's a quote where Olivia says like mentally and thinks about this in response to that line. Anything that gets people to be more excited about the zodiac is a positive. And I said, if that was actually the case, Miss Olivia, then you should have been more open to Zodiac Cupid in the first place.
Exactly.
But you're not. Anyway, we find out that Bennett's not really all that into Harper, but he's willing to go on a second date with her because Olivia insists, even though she's a little bit privately happy that he's not that into her.
Yeah. Bennett spent more time hanging out with Olivia than Harper, but that's all I'm going to say about that.
Man's got his priorities all catawampus.
Yeah, he's a little goofy.
But the last chapter we'll be discussing in this episode is chapter 13, lucky number 13, where basically Bennett sets up Olivia on her first Zodiac Cupid date with a dude named Owen. And they go to this baseball game, and initially she meets up with Bennett and they're sort of discussing and preparing for it. And she reveals like baseball dates would be like a really perfect date. He reveals that Owen picked it. It's there's a weird like a tension, I guess, about that. She goes and sits with Owen in like basically behind the plate seat, which is really good. And they're sort of hitting it off. I didn't read his chemistry.
It's implied that they kind of, and then it like teeters off.
Yeah, because there's moments where she literally says, I got lost in time talking to Owen. And I forget all about Bennett, who like has our food on standby ready for us because Zodiac Cupid's paying for the date. And she and then just immediately turns around and is like, but I'm not that into him.
Yeah. And then randomly like, oh yeah, we're not even talking anymore. And I'm like checking my text messages. And it's like, do we like each other? Do we not? I am confused. I have whiplash again. She also spends more time with Bennett than Owen.
Which as a date, yeah, like from Owen's perspective, I'd be like, what the hell is she?
Yeah.
What? I'd be suspicious.
But also, too, I get it. We're meant to be liking Bennett and not Owen. I get it. I know why.
I know. But, you know, Benny's a little jealous. He sees that they're getting on. And we very clearly understand what this book is going to play out as the rest of the book. That's not a sentence. But you know what I'm trying to say.
You know what? And since that's our last chapter, Ashlyn, do you have any questions for us?
Forever and ever and always. You guys have made this pretty clear, but just in a sum of words, how do you feel about Olivia right now?
I'll say it in one sentence. stubborn in a way that is unproductive and not dynamic in terms of characterization.
Agreed. I will also say I will use one word.
Ooh. Is this 25 words or less, the game show?
I guess so. Unlikable. It's because of her. It's because of her stubborn. Like Lauren puts it beautifully. But because of that, she's unlikable. Like I don't understand what Bennett sees in her.
Yeah.
Like she's annoying and argumentative.
Yeah, borderline hostile at times. And
yeah,
especially this early when you're dating and your rivals would not be enough to sustain me to like continue that relationship.
No.
How about Bennett?
So I like him, but it's because he's the classic cookie cutter, like good guy. And so he's just so vanilla. There's nothing too interesting or new about him that like intrigues me. Like the only thing I kind of know is that yes, he's a businessman. He lost his mom when he was young and he came up with this idea for this app. I know he's a rat.
I totally forgot you were talking about zodiac signs for a second. And I was like, eat them out.
Yeah.
Call him.
Yeah, that's about it. That's all I know about him.
I think the only chapter where I really sat there and was like, I think I like Bennett was the chapter where he's talking about his past with his mom. But I think it was simply because this was the only real like 3-dimensional moment we get for him. Like you said, everything else is like confined to Zodiac Cupid and the concept of being incompatible, opposites attract. Like we're not really given a whole lot of ground for him to stand on as his own character. He feels more of like...
We also find out he doesn't like to dance in public. Something happened his junior year.
Trauma, you know? It hurts us all.
Yep.
Yeah. All that is to say, I think I have no complaints about Bennett, and that is kind of the extent of my impressions on him at this point.
Are you rooting for them?
No.
I'm not against it, but I wouldn't say it's my OTP.
No,
you know?
No. I'll be real. The only reason I'm saying no is just because at this point in the book, Olivia hasn't proven herself worthy of Ben yet. Like we said, he's a pretty cookie cutter, like pretty, like just the perfect romance book guy that you want to, that every like person wants to read about. But she hasn't like earned it yet. She hasn't earned Bennett. Like she hasn't treated him well enough to deserve him. Like she thinks he's like this evil corporation, Silicon Valley like guy who's coming in to steal a good old home women-owned business. When in reality, he's just trying to connect with his past and with his mom.
Yeah. And you saying that makes me think that with this whole like setting up dates and trying to make you fall in love in a month concept, something I would have really been interested to see if she were to rewrite this book is if actually, let's say like Owen and Olivia really did hit it off and that for multiple chapters, they are
Bennett
going on
Harper.
dates. Yeah. One of the pairings really hits it off and then they go on multiple dates with that person and they're thinking like, I mean, they don't have to necessarily be full on, but like it's more of an even match between like, let's use Owen and Bennett as an example. Like, I think that would be super interesting for me to read and almost make me want to actively root for Bennett and Olivia. But instead, we were always just sort of spoon fed that like this is going to be the couple that happens. And there's no real conflict, I feel like, after chapter 10 with them.
No, not really. Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you think that opposites attract?
For me, it depends on the extent of the oppositeness.
Yeah.
Because there's complementary and supplementary traits. And then there's I think very differently socially and politically than you. To me, and this is just a personal thing, I don't think I could ever do that. So I think there has to be a fundamental compatibility or a fundamental, at least like-mindedness in order for a relationship to function. Beyond that, in terms of character traits and like hobbies and those kinds of things, sure. I think you could lean more into opposite attract on that.
I 100% agree, because my personal dating history, not a very long list, a singular person actually. But from my one relationship that I have with my partner, he and I are very, very similar in a lot of ways. And there's things that we are not similar on, but like fundamentally we agree on all, like, I was about to say almost everything. And I was like, nope, everything. We agree pretty much on like everything, like fundamentally, like when it comes to like values and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean,
go ahead.
I was just going to say it may work. It may work for some people. Not me personally.
Lauren, did you get a chance to answer? I'm sorry. Okay. My last question is, the main like section of what we just read is the competition between Olivia and Bennett. Whose method do you think is better?
I don't want to side with Olivia. I don't want to. But
Oh, sorry, you go.
No, you go ahead.
I just have a personal bias against dating apps. Not that I think they're bad, but I just haven't had a big success rate with them. I think they're great for, I say like in general, obviously you can find your one true love on a dating app. I'd say that's not possible. But for me, it was more about initial attraction and like short-term compatibility than, it was fostering long-term. So I think you're taking more of a gamble on like, because you can present yourself very differently online than who you actually are. And I think that at least with a matchmaking service like Lunar Love, it feels more at least tailored to like sift through that. And I think you would waste less time in terms of like who you're going on dates with.
Yeah. I don't know, because I feel like both are no. I don't agree with either of them.
Yeah.
I guess I would have to say it lives just because there is that more personal and human connection there. But I mean, I have never been an online dating person. I never was attracted to it, even when I was single. And I did try it out, but it like never clicked for me, and I was way too nervous like on there. And I just felt like trying to find a genuine connection was very, very, very difficult. So maybe I would say maybe matchmaking, because you do have to invest more time and money into a human service rather than one that is run by an algorithm. So yeah.
All right. I believe that's all the questions Ashlyn has for us.
Yes, I believe it is. Well, with that, we will conclude part 1 of Lunar Love. Tune in next time for part 2, where we discuss the rest of the book and the ending, and we'll kind of give our conclusion thoughts. Hey, you should go listen to us. If you haven't listened to our other episodes, go do that. Except apparently on Google Podcasts, which unfortunately, if you do listen on Google Podcasts, they are closing or something. I don't understand. But you can go listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music. They suggested YouTube Music. We don't know if we have that, but we'll figure that out. But just keep a lookout for us, and we'd love to keep having you. Go follow us on Instagram. Actually, you can find all the information on our Instagram, TikTok, X, and we do have a Switch. Nothing's on there, though, so you can find us there.
A Twitch, not a Switch.
A Twitch.
We do
Twitch,
not have a
not
Switch,
Switch.
we promise.
I do, but anyway. So we will, and you know what? We will see you later, you risky rodents.
I love it.
I'm trying to lean into the Zodiac theme. I'm sorry. Bye.
Join us next week for part 2 of Lunar Love, where we will discuss our final thoughts on the book.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Raunchy Power Hour. Find us on Instagram and Twitter at the RPH Podcast. Send us book recs to our email, raunchypowerhour@gmail.com, or at the link in our bio on any of our socials. As always, stay raunchy.